Hi, I'm Billy Gwaltney, and this is the CYA Podcast. This show is for the physician who understands the importance of protecting everything you've worked so hard to achieve. Each week, I'll bring you tips and advice to help you cut through the clutter and misinformation and show you exactly what you need to preserve your income and way of life. If you're ready to achieve the peace of mind that only financial security can bring, let's get started. Hello, welcome to today's episode of the Cover Your Assets podcast. This is Billy Gwaltney, your host, and as always, I'm thrilled to be with you today. Today I have a really special guest, Dr. Naguib Farah. Naguib, say hello.
Hi, everyone.
I wanted to have Naguib on this call to introduce him to folks. He's been a client of mine since about 2012, and we started working together quite a while ago. And you've been through an interesting situation because you've actually, in addition to buying your insurance, you've actually had to use it, the private specialty disability coverage. And so, Naguib, I'm so grateful for you being willing to share your story and what it was like, the good, the bad, the ugly. So we're just kind of get started and let folks hear firsthand what it's like to, number one, get good coverage, but number two, kind of have to access it and navigate that process. So thank you for being with us. And why don't you start by telling a little bit about yourself and where, kind of your specialty, what you do, and share as much of that as you'd like.
Sure. So my name is Naguib Farah. I grew up in Egypt and went to medical school in Egypt. And then I came in here and did my residency at Hershey at Penn State University. And I've been an ER doctor for 28 years now. And
life in the fast lane, right?
Oh, yes. And it has been pretty fast. Worked in a lot of small towns, worked some shifts that were 24 hours for a while, and sometimes would work one place and then leave and go to another place.
On the same day?
Really worked hard.
Same day?
Yes.
Wow.
And so I did put a lot of stress on myself and a lot of hard work. And that was partly because of my ethics and behavior and personality and the way I was brought up. And that was partly because of the duties we all have, unfortunately, with the life we're living.
Sure.
Out of those 28 years, I was a director for 18 or 19 of them too, of the emergency.
So you served in an administration role as well as the clinical role. Is that how you would classify that? Okay.
Correct.
So when you and I met, you were kind of trucking along in your career and needed to add some disability coverage. And I'd reached out to you, again, this was back in 2012, so a little over a decade ago. What was your thought process at the time? What made you think about meeting with me and kind of moving forward with getting that coverage?
Yeah, I had maxed out on a disability insurance that I had bought right after I finished residency, which was a pretty good insurance. And at the time I thought it was enough. And of course, as usual, we always think that we hope that this is wasted money, both disability insurance and life insurance. We hope that this is money that I would waste and not ever have to use it. And but then with the progress of time and having kids, I thought that I should add a little bit more to my disability and cover a little bit more of my expenses. And I really liked your approach and your personality, so I decided to stick with you.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I remember meeting with you, I think it was outside Charlotte, an emergency room, or outside in a little side office somewhere when we were talking and kind of going through the numbers. And I still remember that. What was the buying process like for you when you went through the medical screening and got your coverage? Just tell us a little bit about that. Is there anything memorable about it?
Not really. I don't remember having any problems. Of course, at the time I was younger, much younger and healthier and had no problems. So the process was pretty easy and simple. The choices were pretty well delineated of whether to choose, how long to choose a coverage, to age 65 or what, to add own occupation, which was obviously something I definitely wanted to do. And then otherwise, cost of living increases and other things that were just easy decisions, and also to take the extra increase in the coverage with time, which I thought was a very good thing to have.
Right. Right. So you had the ability to increase as your income can continue to grow because your income has expanded a good bit over the last decade. I mean, as you've
Yes, it
taken on more
has.
roles and more shifts, and of course, there's a cost for that, right? And that's what
Yes.
you're. So, did you ever think you would be disabled?
No, no, I really thought that I was gonna be able to continue to do what I was doing until I wanted to stop. I really thought that I had good genes. You know, my family always all were hardworking, lived a long life. Never really expected the medical problems that I ended up having at all.
Hmm,
And like I said, I was hoping that this is just an insurance that I would just have and not ever use.
right. Yeah, and I have that conversation with a lot of clients. We feel like I tell young physicians that the time to get your insurance is likely when you think you need it the least, because that's when an insurance company will give you their best at their best rate, their best definitions at the best rate is when you feel, or when we tend to feel the most bulletproof or the most unaffected. Good genes. I love what you said there. Good genes, hardworking. All of my clients, physicians. One reason I work with physicians is I really admire what you let guys and gals do. I mean, it's not easy to go through what you go through to get qualified to do what you do. And we need more of you, not less of you, which is one reason you have so many shifts. I mean, the sky's the limit as far as what you want to do because there's a shortage. I mean, you need more, not less. We
Absolutely.
can't say that about attorneys, right? We can't say that about other things, or maybe even insurance agents. So so take us to the time, share some of your story about as we fast forward to what happened that triggered you needing to access the benefit and kind of go through that process.
Yeah, it was a horrible morning. Actually, it was a horrible night the night before. I remember I had a very rough shift,
Mm,
and I came out very upset at certain things that happened with some patients and with certain nurses. And again, that type A personality, I felt like my blood pressure was going up that night. Anyways, I was supposed to work again the next morning. I came home, slept, and got up to go to work as usual. And on my way there, while I was driving, I felt like I'm going to pass out, and my left arm went numb, and my vision got blurred. So I stopped at the side of the road and called the ambulance, and they stayed with me. They recognized me, the ambulance crew, and stayed with me for about 45 minutes. And the feeling like I'm going to pass out went away. My arm got better, and the blurred vision is what continued. And I didn't really know what it was as far as the blurred vision. Of course, I knew that I was having a stroke. And so I called my friends that teach at Atrium, and I said, this is what happened and so forth. And, I asked about the, uh, the treatment and wanted to make sure that what I'm guessing is what I would do for my patients is correct. And so I ended up not wanting to go with the ambulance to a small town in South Carolina, and so I ended up coming back home, and that's when I started covering my eyes, and I realized that I didn't have blurred vision. I was actually completely blind in my right eye. So then I called again to the emergency room doctors because I knew that since my symptoms were getting better, I'm not going to get the medicine that busts the clot. But I just wanted to make sure they don't want to be my own doctor. And then I asked them about the eye doctor coverage, and they said that the eye doctors, like their equipment in their office rather than coming to the ER and seeing patients. So I called my eye doctor and I told them I'm a doctor and I think I'm having a stroke and I need to be seen quickly. And luckily, they put me in with a retina specialist
the
within
same
20
day?
minutes.
Within
Same day,
20
20
minutes? Wow.
minutes. Yeah,
Okay. When did this happen? What's the
that
day
was
of the week?
January 16, 2020.
2020. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot going on in 2020
Oh
outside of all
yes.
this, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened then?
So then I actually ended up staying in his office for about 4 or 5 hours. I had tests that I had never heard of before, even as a doctor. And they found out that I had bleeding in the back of my eye called retinal hemorrhage. So I'm glad I didn't get the medicine that bust the clot because that probably would have made these worse. And they found out that my arteries are very stiff and kinking the veins. My retina was 3 or 4 times as swollen as it normally should be, as well as my optic nerve. And I had completely clogged my central retinal vein. That's where the clot went. So then, so I ended up with a shot in the eye right then and there, like the ones that patients get for macular degeneration. The doctor himself told me that they now don't usually see patients that quickly because people don't realize it as quickly as I did. So we were actually, doing stuff that we were not sure what the outcome will be. But he wanted to protect my eye at least by giving me the shot. And then he saw me another 2-3 days later. And we continued with the shots every week in the beginning, and then for a few months, and then we spaced it out to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and now I'm getting them every 3 months. Unfortunately, my central vision never came back. So if I cover my good eye and I'm looking in front of me, I see a dark gray circle in the middle, and I can see just the outside. So I can't really read with that eye or drive with that eye or watch TV with that eye. It's basically just, seeing furniture, not running into doors and stuff like that. If I had that one eye only, of course.
Okay. What other symptoms did you have? Were there other things going on?
Everything else came back. Now, before that, you talk about doctors procrastinating. Before that, I had some visual problems. I would suddenly, get some squiggly vision. I would get headaches, and I thought it was a complex migraine that I was getting, and that arm numbness would happen with it and then go away. It happened to me a few times, and I told my eye doctor about it. I told my regular doctor about it. I even asked some colleagues in the at lunches and in the doctor's lounges and stuff like that, and everybody thought, and even a neurologist thought it was a complex migraine that I was getting. But on the other hand, unfortunately, fortunately for me, to not think that I'm stupid, but unfortunately for anybody that has this condition, there would have been nothing to prevent it from happening anyways, unfortunately.
Okay.
So even if I knew that I was heading towards that, unfortunately, there's no treatment or prevention for it.
Now, was the stress you were under the night before, was that a contributing factor? Is that what you're saying, that or is it?
After all the tests were done, and because I had a lot of tests after that happened, and we didn't really find anything else wrong with me, it's that's what all of the doctors blamed it, that my blood pressure shot up, probably got worse during the night, and I threw the clot that day.
So how does this affect your work schedule as this is going on? What's happening with work and your ability or inability to kind of continue on your current pace?
Well, I'll tell you, the first couple of weeks to couple of months were really horrible, Billy. I was afraid to get out of the house. I had a stroke. I see it all the time with my patients. I was really thinking that one thing will lead to another, and I'll either drop dead from my next stroke or end up in a wheelchair or end up a vegetable in a nursing home somewhere. So the first couple of months, I had horrible anxiety, and I was very depressed and worried, and did not really feel like I felt like everything I worked for all of my life is crumbling down. And with the treatments and with the help of my friends and my doctors, I was actually, my friends forced me, for example, the first time 2 months later to go play tennis, and they said, we're going to have 3 of your best friends playing. We don't care if you whiff on the ball. We don't care what you do. And still going to the club that day to play tennis, I felt like I am afraid that I'm going to drop dead on the tennis court because I had not run or put any stress on my heart or anything. And I was on 3 blood pressure medications now suddenly, and, an aspirin and all kinds of things, and the shots in the eyes. But, it went well the first time, and they insisted that I do it again. And I did whiff on the balls, and I couldn't really see, and I had double vision. I still have. And, my depth perception, of course, you have to have 2 eyes to have the depth perception. Sure. So that's gone and never coming back. And it was a very, very tough couple of months.
So you were seeing your physicians, you were not working, and then as it comes to the disability insurance, you started initiating the paperwork to submit your claim. Is that right?
Yeah, that actually was like 2, 3 months later, because like the first 2 months my head was spinning and I wasn't really in the mood for uh, getting into all this. And I
Mm-hmm.
told actually the insurance company representative many times, I cannot tell you because I feel like I have become an invalid, a loser, and I just hate to complain.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very, very tough to tell somebody that I can't work as much anymore. And I also, in the beginning, I also still had hope that these shots will continue to work and I will get my eye back and my vision back and I'll go back to working again. And so I was hoping that the progress that we made in the first few weeks to couple of months will continue. Unfortunately, we got the most out of it and it stopped.
Okay. So, what was the process like when you were submitting those forms and talking with the insurance company, and what questions you had, and how that went, how you felt, and how you and I ended up kind of talking in more detail?
Yeah, that process was very tedious and painful. I had to. I felt like I was bothering my doctors by filling up those papers so much. So that was embarrassing. I felt like I was a burden on them too, not just on myself. There was a lot of paperwork to fill, a lot of repetitive questions to answer, a lot of information to collect for them, and you would send the stuff, and they would come back with more questions and the financial information and my accountant, showing them my incomes from before and so forth. And there was a big difference also between the two contracts. Of course, the first insurance policy I had was from 40 years ago almost, so I was very young, and it was and terms were different, and insurance coverage at the time was different. So there was also the difference between the two requests and the difference between how they see it. Um, and and then eventually one agreed uh, and gave me the disability and the other one did not, and that's when I had to call you for help and ask you what to do. And no, I did not know anything about these processes. I did not really want to know any of these processes.
Right.
Just like I don't want to know what to do, for a funeral. I don't want to
Right.
know that, you know.
That's very true. That's very true. So you avoid it as long as you can, because that's what I remember is, as an insured, you can always contact the insurance company direct and kind of just go through that process. You don't have to go through a broker like me, or in terms of when you're filing the claim. And so you kind of navigated that process on your own at first. And then one company approved you, the other company did not. And that's when you reached out to me. And I remember that. I remember that call. I remember talking to you and you're like, "Hey, Billy, I just got a letter where they're saying they've denied my claim." And I remember you and I had talked once before then, but essentially the majority of it had kind of you kind of been doing your due diligence, your work behind the scenes. And I remember being really surprised. I mean, because I've never gotten that before. I mean, we have clients on claim. I've never had one call me and say, "Hey, I just got denied." And especially after having that conversation where you're blind in one eye and just knowing the details, going, "Okay, something seems a little bit off." And yet, when you went through that, what did that make you feel like? I mean, because you were close to even canceling your policy. I mean, you were like, "Hey, I'm just going to get rid of this because it's not working." Right? You
Right,
remember that?
right. When I
Yeah.
called you, I actually called you to say, "Hey, I'm just going to go ahead and cancel my policy. I got denied." And I flat out, when I got denied, I called the insurance company and I said, "So you basically are not going to cover me with disability except if I'm just, completely dead or completely bedridden. I might as well, I have life insurance, I might as well save that money and not pay it, especially if I'm going to be on disability, not making as much money. I needed to also look at my costs and cut it." So the
Sure.
main reason I called you is to get your advice of how to cancel the insurance, and that was very, very telling and very very gracious of you. I felt like you were more upset than I was about me getting denied. And you convinced me that you need to fight for me and that I should get it. And obviously, the other company thought I should get it, and you were more uh, strong about it than I was for myself.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, when I heard that, that was my thought. Either you're completely lying, which I knew was not the case, or something's gotten lost in translation. Something hasn't occurred, and you've even talked about it. I can tell even since we've been talking on this podcast that, and I see this so much with my clients where there's such a work ethic. I mean, you don't go into medicine if you're looking to veg and watch Netflix all day. And so there's a certain drive that you have, and I could tell when talking to you that you had hey, I'm going to get through this. It's not as bad. And there was a little bit of almost you were your worst enemy to your physicians, because after I spoke to you that time, I contacted the insurance company and the claims person that you'd been dealing with and said, you got to tell me what's going on here because something's missing. And he just said, the doctor's notes indicate that he's not disabled. They don't say that he's disabled. And he says, he actually made the comment that I have a suspicion that he probably is, but the records don't say that he is. And so something needs to be corrected, and we'll revisit once they're corrected. So then you and I got on a call. I don't know if you remember that, but we got on a call and said, hey, you need to be more, not honest. It's not honest, but you kind of need to let go of the I'm going to be okay part of this and just tell your physicians what's happening. Because I think even the eye doctors seem to indicate that your vision was okay, because you had kind of made it seem like, oh, I'm getting better, things are better. But then you went back and kind of corrected the record with them and told them,
Yeah,
am I remembering that correctly?
I actually don't know what happened. I ended up asking the eye doctor once the insurance company approved me, and I asked the insurance person what happened, what has changed. He said it was the eye doctor. And I went back to the eye doctor next time to get my shot, and I said, what did you send differently to one insurance company versus the other insurance company? And what did you send the second time when they asked about it again? And they said, I don't know, not really. I didn't send anything different. I never really got a straight answer.
Mm.
But I had told the insurance gentleman that it's very hard for me to admit deficit.
Mm.
It was very hard for me. I felt like I would be first of all embarrassed, and number two, I would feel like you know abusing the system or milking it, and I just did not ever feel like I would come to that point.
Mm. Mm. So you struggled in a sense with the reality of being disabled. I mean, like you were, and unintentionally, I think you were communicating to those that were making these decisions and putting notes in records and deciding the fate of the claim that, hey, I'm strong. We're going to be okay. It's going to be pull our bootstraps up. We're going to be fine, which impacted your claim, apparently. Yeah. And so,
yeah, I wanted to go back to work.
Hmm.
The biggest problem is when I found out that I have now a 10% chance of it happening in the other eye. And so that would make me completely disabled. That is definitely something that I don't want to happen to me.
Right.
So I needed the coverage so that I can work a little bit less.
Right.
I don't want to stop working, but I could not put myself under the same stress again and have it happen to the same eye, especially that, like I told you, it's not preventable.
Right. So this was obviously an emotional process, because you then had to go back to the doctors and get some notes clarified. We resubmitted all that information to the claims person, who then approved. Then I got the other call, which was a much better call, where you called me and said, "Hey, Billy, I got a letter. They've approved my claim, and they're gonna pay. They paid you some back. They
Yes.
went retroactive, right? Which was really good. That was important for them to do, which contractually they have to. So what did that feel like? Did kind of at least a small victory in kind of the mess of all this, right?
Yeah, obviously it relieved a little bit of the stress of the debt and the lack of money that I had gotten into by not working for so long. So that relieved that part, and and I felt like, again, even then, I felt like at least temporarily I can relax and hopefully get my strength back and go back to working full time. Still, eventually, and. But obviously, it made a big difference. I mean, my anxiety and depression and all that stuff about it was really compounded by the fact that I wasn't able to pay my bills for all these months because my bills never changed, my expenses never changed, my health care expenses were over 20 some $1,000s, out of pocket in addition to it. What the other expenses, my mortgage didn't change, my our food and
So
gas and cars didn't
did
change.
your overall expenses actually go up when you factor in the healthcare part?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's well, one of the in you get a lot of credit, Naguib, for in the midst of all that, after getting that first letter that said it had been denied, to to hear me, and as I said, hey, don't cancel your policy yet. Give me 3 weeks, give me 2 or 3 weeks to see what we can work out, and then you can cancel it. And if you are going to cancel it, I'll help you cancel it, because if it's not going to work, I don't want you to have it. But staying around, and because then because it was still active, they could go back and reopen the file. And once those records came in, it was a much better outcome. Tell us, how are you doing now? What's it like for you at this point?
So now I'm working about 2/3 of the time that I used to work. I quit all administrative duties also. So of course, so my income is still down, but I have gotten my blood pressure under control. My cholesterol is doing very well. I take aspirin and vitamins and try to go exercise at least twice a week.
You're
And
playing tennis today, right? After this call, you're playing tennis,
that's
right?
right. That's
Yep.
right.
Good for you.
And I went. So I left all full time jobs so I can control my schedule and not have to work 3 4 shifts in a row. I stopped working more than 2 or 3 when they're really very stuck. But usually I do my schedule at 2 shifts at a time. That's it. And it doesn't matter to me, weekends or weekdays, but I don't want to do more than 2 shifts at a time. I also quit all administrative duties, and I also went and got a part time job at the VA, which is much less stressful, much less fast paced. And I work there some of the time too to even make my life a little bit easier. And then to not lose my skills as an ER doctor, I'm still working in a couple of community ERs, but that's just 4 to 6 times a month, and that's it.
So you essentially you're self-employed. You're your own entity. So do you see yourself differently now than you used to, where you call there's a big difference in kind of the before and after. What I just heard you say is that you're calling the shots now. You decide when you want to work, where you want to work, and how much you want to work. Prior to this, you were basically just wide open, going where they told you to go, and it seems like there's a difference in how you see what you do and your control over that. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely. I now see I see all of life in a different way. I see much more the big picture rather than the minor things that have become not important to me. Whether in where I want to spend my money or where I want to spend my time or how I want to live my life. And it's really unfortunate that it took such a bad outcome to learn this lesson in life. And I also realized that, despite all I've been doing, I've been providing for my kids. Yes, they've been getting everything they need, and they are in private schools and private colleges and all that kind of stuff. That's something that I cannot deny. That I feel like it's still my duty. But as far as everything else, in life and what car to drive and what to do and stuff like that, the priorities have changed completely. to I want to enjoy my life, I want to travel, I don't want to have another stroke. And on the other hand, you also feel after working so hard that, anyways, you've been spinning your wheels between paying a lot of money for insurance and taxes and all that stuff. You're really not making any headways, whether you work twice as much and you work
Mm.
half as much. It's,
Hmm.
and having seen my family go through it, and my father go to a nursing home before he passed away, and and you have to spend all your life savings in the nursing home. Then the Medicaid kicks in and the government takes
Right.
care of you. But after you spend all your life savings into it, why do we do that? Why do we do that? Why are we always under such stress and such pressure? It's mind-boggling.
Well, the good news is you're still young, so you've got a ways to go yet, right? You look great and you sound great. And one last question, and then we'll let you go so you can play some tennis. For the young physicians that are listening to this now, they're 28 to 35, somewhere in that range, and they're on the front end of their career, thinking about getting insurance. Maybe they're already an attending or they're going to be an attending. What would you say to them regarding coverage and regarding just kind of your philosophy as you sit here now?
I'll say to them, look at the future. Don't think you're not vulnerable. Don't think you're invincible. Plan for the future, because your responsibilities are going to be very different in 10 and 20 years towards your family, towards your kids, and even towards your aging parents.
Hmm.
And take care of yourself, so you don't need that insurance, neither life or disability. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. So take it easy, plan for a long term, but have all your bases covered.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Naguib. Thank you for this time. It's been awesome. Just so much wisdom here and a lot of, I think, valuable information for people that want to know whether the insurance is really worth it, if it's worth thinking about, or can the worst case scenario happen. And so just glad that you're still here and you're able to kind of bounce back. And it's a testament to your courage and your strength. And I just appreciate your authenticity and your openness with sharing your situation here. And we'll maybe have you back at some point as things continue to go. So
I'll be glad.
Thank you again. Yeah, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Billy. Thank you.
We'll wrap up here. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime with any questions. My number is 704-270-2376. And again, it's Billy Gwaltney. Thank you, as always, for being with us.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.